Today's video, I want to introduce you to the new drilling options in the latest CabWriter release. So let me open up our options page, and one new thing you'll notice on the project page is the drilling method, CNC or line boring. I'm going to choose line boring for the moment, and you'll notice that there is two tabs that are new on here. There used to be one tab called drilling, but now we have one called line boring and one called CNC boring. So let's cover the line boring one first. In line boring, we've got a few different settings here, and I'm going to just zoom in on a couple things here so we can see in the background. The first thing we have for both upper and lower cabinets is the first hole starting reference, whether we want it from the bottom of the cabinet or the top of the cabinet. And in base cabinets, I typically start it from the bottom of the cabinet. The first hole distance being 2 1/4 from the bottom of the cabinet side, not the top of the bottom, but the bottom of the cabinet side. My line boring machine has 23 bits, and the back row reference point in the case of the bottom is the front edge of the cabinet, and I've got it at 517 millimeters back from the front edge. That is the spec for the 21-inch drawer slides that from Bloom that I typically use, and that gives the proper spacing for the back row from the front edge of the cabinet to the back row so that my drawer slides fit right. And then there's some general settings. I can enable or disable the line boring, so on a cabinet by cabinet basis I can do that. The holes are 5 millimeters in diameter, 1/2 inch depth, and the front row offset from the front edge of the cabinet is 37 millimeters, and the vertical spacing is 32 millimeters. You may recognize this as all the proper specs for European cabinet line boring using the 32 millimeter system. For the upper cabinet, I can choose the top or bottom as my starting point reference. So why would I want to choose the top? You notice all the rest is different, or is the same as over here, except for, so I'll get back to that point in a second, except for back row reference point. Since I don't have any drawer slides on the top, there's no real reason that there has to be a specified distance between the front row here and the back row here. So it's just as easy for me to go 37 millimeters off the front edge for the front row and 37 millimeters off the back edge for the back row, because I can just flip it around on my line boring machine and drill both settings. But let me go back to the reference starting at the top. In a cabinet like this, where I've got one that's up and two that are down, and you'll notice the way I construct the cabinets is I use a double wall. I use a wall of the cabinet here and a wall of the cabinet here, and then I make an 1.5 inch style that covers both of them, and it flushes up on the inside. This is how I can use the 32 millimeter system for face frame cabinets. And they make these nice little barrel bolts that will go through 5 millimeter holes to hold your cabinets together. So if I were to drill starting off the bottom from this cabinet and then the bottom from this cabinet, the odds of these holes lining up is pretty slim. By starting at the top, I am able to have the holes line up on this cabinet and this cabinet and all three cabinets, because they're referencing from the top edge and the tops are lined up. So that allows me to line bore properly and use my barrel bolts to put the cabinets together. So I'm going to redraw this cabinet down here to have line boring, so we can look at it on a lower cabinet. And I'm going to turn everything off, the doors as well. And we can see in this case I had it set for 2¼ inches off the bottom of the cabinet side. The reason we're referencing off the bottom of the cabinet side is that's what would go up against the fence on a line boring machine. And if we look here, our front row, if I go to the tape tool, our front row from the center of the hole, the front edge of the cabinet side should be 37 millimeters, which is equivalent to 1 29/64. If we go and look at our back hole, it is not 37 millimeters off the back edge because I referenced 517 millimeters off the front edge, which is 20 23/64. But if I look at my upper cabinets, in this case, my center hole, the center of my hole is, oops, it's hard to see, is 37 millimeters off the back, and I mean off the front, and this one is 37 millimeters off the back edge. Again, because I don't have drawer slides there. So, we can drill these holes. We can drill these holes in the sides for you, and that's obviously if you have a CNC, you're going to use the selective hole drilling. So this is more for you to be able to see that the holes are going in the spot that works for you, and also it'll propagate to your shop drawings so that you can dimension them and show where they're supposed to go without having to draw them all in one by one. So that one's relatively straightforward. Now let's cover the CNC hole drilling. So I'm going to switch this to a CNC project, which means all of these are going to come into play. So what I'm going to first do is convert these cabinets to a CNC project by just redrawing those cabinets. Say no. And let's just do one of these uppers for now. Redraw that one. Whoops. Obviously my cabinet height is not correct for that upper. It was set for that middle cabinet. So let me just put it back to 36 inches and redraw the cabinet. All right, so let me turn the doors off on everything, and we'll see something a little bit different here. We're going to see separate hinge plate holes, separate shelf holes. Down here we're going to see just on a drawer bank you're only going to see the drawer slide. Over here you can only see the drawer slide holes, and over here you're going to see shelf pin holes. And if we look on the ends here, we're going to see something that we call construction holes. Those are holes that go all the way through, and I use those to put comfort screws in there. And also, you're going to see these two little holes here and a hole back here. Those we call connector holes. They also go all the way through, and they're on both sides. It allows me to put those little barrel bolts through there to line my cabinets up easily. So let's open up the options page and discuss what our options are, and we can compare that to the cabinets. So if we go to the CNC boring page, we have the ability to enable or disable a bunch of different things. So there's something we call system holes, construction holes, and connector holes. System holes are anything that are shelf holes, hinge plate holes, or drawer slide holes. Construction holes, as I mentioned, are the ones on the ends here that go all the way through into the top and the bottom of the cabinet for screws or dowels. And connector holes, as I mentioned, are these individual holes that go all the way through that we can put barrel bolts through. So in general, we're saying that the system holes are 5 millimeters in diameter and a 1/2 inch deep, just like in the regular 32 millimeter system. If we go to our shelf hole options, which are exactly the same for the upper and the lower, I can enable or disable just those. I have a buffer, which is currently set to 9 inches. And what that's saying is and 7 inches on the top. What that's saying is I want a minimum of 7 inches from the bottom of the opening to the first hole. Oops. I'm going to zoom back in here. Zoom back out. I lost my cabinets. There we go. If we look at the cabinet that we drew here, minimum of 7 inches from here to here. If I put 10 inches, that would put the first hole up here somewhere, and I'd have a smaller number of shelf pin holes. I can also determine the front row offset, so that's 37 millimeters from here to here. And my back row offset can be referenced off the back or the front of the cabinet. On uppers again, I don't really care, so I just put the 37 millimeters from the back edge. And I don't actually even care on lowers, because it's for shelves, not for drawer slides. So I'm just going to go 37 millimeters in from the back edge on lowers as well. And 32 millimeter spacing for both of them. Now, one thing you'll notice here is it's drilling the shelf pin holes even on a drawer bank, and we don't want that. I could go and disable it, but it would disable it for both these cabinets. That's going to be fixed in the release that you'll see, so it should automatically not draw shelf pin holes in the drawer bank. All right, moving on, the hinge plate holes. So if we look back up here, we can enable or disable those. The default hinge side is left, but you'll notice on this cabinet they're on the right. And that's because there's some intelligence built in. If there's 2 doors, it puts hinge holes on both sides. If there's only 1 door, if it's a blind or butt corner style, it'll put the hinge on that side. If there's an end panel, it'll put the hinge on that side. So it tries to pick the proper side for the hinge holes. But if you have a cabinet that's just in the middle of a run somewhere all by itself, there's no good way to know which side the hinges go on. This just is telling you the default, which can be changed on a cabinet by cabinet basis as you create the cabinet. So if you don't like the side that it's on, you can flip it over to the other side. Again, the front hole offset, 37 millimeters, 32 millimeter spacing. Then we have some delimiters. So what this is saying is a small door is considered anything under 16 inches, a large door anything under 30 inches, over 30 inches. So on a small door, we're going to go and center these hinge plate holes 2.5 inches from the bottom of the door and 2.5 inches from the top of the door to the center. A medium door would be 3 1/4, and a large door would be 3 3/4. If we look at this door is, let me close this for a second, get my tape tool, and the tape tool says 32.5, so that should be considered a large door, which means we would be 3 1/4 from here to here, to the center. Whereas on this door, if I change that, that would be considered probably a medium door, and we would have only 3 1/4 inches to the center of the hinge plate holes. So you can control that any way you want. And the last one is your drawer slide holes. So if we went down here and looked at these drawer slide holes, what this is saying is enable or disable, and what's the vertical offset from the opening. So from this point to where the first hole starts to the center, we want 1.5 inches, and that's because I happen to know, and that would be from this opening here and also from this opening here. Forget about these guys for right now. And that is because with the Bloom undermount hinges, the first hole needs to be about 1.5 inches up for the drawer slide to fit to the bottom here, and for it to line up properly with this opening and this opening. So that takes care of all of our system holes. And then we have construction holes. So that is, again, these holes going all the way through the end of the cabinet side. And we've got the ability to specify the hole diameter. I use 5 millimeters because I use it as a pilot hole for my conformat screws, and then I drill that out using a countersink bit later. And a maximum spacing of 5 inches. So that's saying if there's multiple holes here and parts greater than 5 inches, we want a maximum of 5 inches between these holes. That's, that one happens to be according to AWI standards, so that's what I use. And connector holes, these little holes up here that I specified, and one back here, what we can enable or disable them. 5 millimeter hole diameter, because that's what the barrel bolts are spec'd at, and 2 inches from the front and back edge, so 2 inches from here to here, here to here, from here to here, 3/4 of an inch from the underside of the top or stretcher, and 2.5 inches from the bottom of the bottom here to this first hole. We don't drill one in front because it often interferes with the hinge plate holes, so we've just got these 3, and I can use other screws maybe right here behind this hinge plate to help hold the cabinet together. So that's pretty much all there is to the new drilling tabs. There is another video that's going to cover drawer boxes, because we can now automatically draw the drawer boxes and determine the spacing of these holes based on the drawer slide that you're using. So that will be a separate video that that you'll want to check out, because this tab for drawer slide holes only covers this offset from here to here, but where these holes are positioned front to back is controlled on the drawers tab. And we will cover that in the separate video that covers drawing drawer boxes and drawer holes. Thanks, and enjoy the new drilling tabs.